Okay, so
If there's something I can do for you, don't move your legs.
Okay.
I was going to try and put this chair on your back so you can be supported with it. No?
Fine,
It's okay.
fine.
So, the 2011 referendum was an important point for all the transition. Do you think that this was a kind of event that really shaped the transition in a good or bad direction?
So there was a referendum. There was a referendum in 2011, in March 2011, about a set of constitutional changes, amendments, that would facilitate the transition or direct the path of that transition. A lot of people refer to this part as like the landmark or the turning point in the history of the Egyptian revolution or the uprising. It is important. It did create a certain path, but people give it a lot of importance, more than it actually deserves. Because if you think about it as the turning point, then you assume that the political path is the only factor, is the only path through which the revolution is moving. When what we're seeing right now is that yes, there is political stagnation. Yes, the current crisis, which started in November 2012 with another constitutional decree issued by President Mohamed Morsi, is in fact did have its impact on the street. But what we're seeing is that the street is having a life on its own. There are other factors than the political path, and more politicians are coming to terms, even if they don't admit it, are coming to terms with the fact that they cannot contain what's happening on the street. They cannot control it. No one can really, and this is what we're seeing. So, in retrospect, at some point, yes, we did say that the way the referendum went and the fact that people voted yes for certain changes that people attribute the success of the Islamists to. At one point, yes, we said that these are important, but it's in retrospect, it wasn't the important thing. It's a factor, but it's not the only factor. It's not the only decisive factor.
But you said that in the political path nothing changed, okay? But I think, do you think that there were other changes, so that those people who said that nothing changed from the previous regime till now are wrong, because something, maybe not the political path, but something else has changed?
No, the entire society has changed. It's not just political. Even the political scene, people. It's frustrating to a lot of people. Even the opposition is not doing as well as it should, or as we expected it to be. But the entire scene is different. It's alive, and the way the street is in Egypt, and this is what's really important, because this is what happened. This is, I guess, what changed is the fact that people believe that they can make change happen, and. The theory is that the fear barrier broke, and this did happen, but it allowed people hope, and we're seeing now, and we're just early 2013, and there is a movement in the street. There's a mentality that I, as someone I'm 30, and I believe that I feel that I'm too old for what's happening, and that the mental blocks that I go through to just accept things, to accept changes, do not even exist with youth 10 years younger than me or 15 younger than me, and they are sort of taking the lead. They're pushing the street, and it has its negative repercussions, because sometimes it's very confusing. You don't understand what's happening, and you don't or don't know how this will go or where it will lead. But at the end of the day, it's also a sign of the change of times. It's a new generation. It's a new mindset of how things are going, and we should either understand it, come to terms with it, and try and not steer it or lead it, but at least direct it to find a way where it ends, or leads to a place where everyone would be, or at least most people, at the very least the people that are doing this are taking the lead in this, are satisfied with its ending and where it's heading at least.
And one of these barriers that was cut down was broken down. It was the one of self-censorship in a way. But what about censorship? Do you think that we saw that after the fall of Mubarak, seems for a couple of months that there was really freedom of expression, but then we have some change. So what do you think, and what is the situation now?
Right after the fall of Mubarak, it wasn't just the censorship was removed. Actually, a lot of people, and you can see it if you follow Egyptian press, whether government, whether they're state-run or privately owned, you can see that they went through a phase of a bit of confusion, because we've lived with censorship, we've lived through self-censorship, and it's kind of like we've been automated in a sense to think that way. But it's and it took them a while to keep pushing the line, especially that for a year and a half they were pushing the line against the military, and it's one of the oldest institutions in Egypt, and it's one of the biggest biggest red lines in Egypt, and it took them a while to keep trying and push that a little bit to find a space where it's acceptable, or at least to know where to stop and where to push at. And it took us a while. Right now what we're seeing is that the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a big authority, but at the same time it's not an old authority. It's, even though they're using Islam to back up their arguments, to back up their discourse, and Islam is also one of the biggest, religion in general is one of the biggest red lines. What we're seeing is that there's more, not courage, but it's more acceptable for journalists to criticize the Muslim Brotherhood than it was for the military. And you could explain that by saying that it actually was it was the practice over the year and a half with the military that led to the state of being. But then again, it's not just an issue of censorship, it's also an issue of professional journalism. And that's lacking, because even though journalism or journalists need to challenge authority, need to challenge the general discourse, the official version of events that governments tend to feed its people, it's they need to do it professionally. And sometimes you could find something that you agree with, but just because you could agree with, but it's the way it's presented makes it unbelievable, and it actually hurts your case more than it does. So it's not just about censorship. The Muslim Brotherhood are fighting freedom of expression in a sense, and in different ways, by associating the criticism they have with religion, but also the criticism to religion, the critique of religion and the religious discourse in general is something that Egypt has to come to terms with, and it's already happening. We find what has been labeled as like sacred religious symbols are being attacked and criticized and being shown for being human beings.